Firstly, salam, namaste, sat sri akal, adab. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, your duty, your dharma is to act in line with who you are. That, ladies and gentlemen, is timeless wisdom. Today, I want to share my own perspective on that truth. I call it the Saptaniti, or the 7 principles of life. These are my lived experiences. 7 simple skills that act like your life playbook. Each one is small on its own, but together they make you extraordinary in this world. You don't need to become someone else. You already carry your own raw material. All you need to see is your own spotlight and live your story with clarity. You and I, we live in this extraordinary world. Everyone around you is chasing something. Some of us are chasing jobs, recognition, power, but none of that sets you apart. What sets you apart is the story you carry within yourself. That story is not written on paper. That story definitely is not written on your LinkedIn bio. It is written in your ambition. It is written in your beliefs. And it is written in your capabilities. Together, when you combine these 3 things, they create your aura. Aura is your energy. Before your resume, before your introduction, before the words you speak, people will always see your aura. और कहानी नहीं तो कुछ भी नहीं है. Your story matters because it is your anchor. It decides who you are when no one is watching. It decides what you stand for when your life tests you. It decides how people remember you long after you have left the room. But here is the paradox. Your story is deeply personal, but it is never private. Every choice you make, every silence you hold, every stand you take, it all tells the world your story. You are living your story every day by every line. You just don't realize it. In life, your story is your moat, is your USP. It is the reason someone trusts you. It is the reason someone follows you. It is the reason someone remembers you. Without your story, you are just a noise in this extraordinary world which appears to be noisy for you then. With your story, you become a signal. In the Mahabharata, Krishna tells Arjuna, I have given you the knowledge, but the choice is yours. That's the essence of a story. No one else can write your script. You decide your action, you decide your path, you decide your line. But a story is not good enough if the story does not travel. The story needs to travel, and that's where storytelling begins. Storytelling is when your own story comes out alive. Why is storytelling important? Because life is not a book. You write once and you put it away. Life is lived in real time. Your story is written every day. At the same time, it is being told every day as well. People don't just read who you are. Understand what I'm saying? People don't read who you are. People experience who you are. They experience in your words, in your choices, in your reactions. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is storytelling. Think of it like a Bollywood film. A script by itself is meaningless, it's lifeless. You need the actors, you need the props, you need the director, you need the sound. They make the movie come alive. Your life, your storytelling ability works exactly the same way. You may be carrying the strongest story inside, the strongest, but unless you do not narrate it with energy and clarity, no one is going to remember your story. That's just the fact of life. Look at the Mahabharata. Arjun stood frozen on the battlefield because he was drowning in doubt. Krishna did not give him a weapon. He just gave him words. That storytelling gave Arjuna the courage, the strength, but more importantly, clarity. Without it, the battle would have been lost much before it began. But here's the truth. Here's the truth. You tell the world who you are the moment you open your mouth. That's just a fact. Our choices show our values. Our words show our intent. Your attention shows what truly matters. If you do not narrate your own story, the world will narrate your story, and sometimes you're not going to like that. Your life is your story, and it needs to be told in your words because that's your experience. And the first step of storytelling is the language you use. That takes us to the third sapta, and that is called speaking. Why this matters, speaking? Why language matters? Simple. Language, you and I know, are never just words. Language is your identity. Language is your pride. Language is the culture. When you make that effort to speak the language of a place, understand, when you make that effort to speak the language of a place, you do more than communicate. You show respect, you show intent, you also show them that you belong to that place. So if you want to live your ambition in Maharashtra, learn to speak Marathi. If you want to live your ambition in Karnataka, learn to speak Kannada. If you want to live your experience in France, learn to speak French. Same case with Spanish in Spain. Same case with Italian in Italy. You don't have to be fluent. That's the beauty of language. You don't need to know poetry. You don't need to know grammar. You only need to be good enough for people to know that you tried. A greeting, a thank you, a few simple sentences. Remember, that should not be cosmetic. It's a signal that you're putting it out there. But why does it matter? Because language collapses all barriers faster than any of your resumes will. It tells the other person on the other side, whether you're in Spain, whether you're in Italy, whether you're in Maharashtra, whether you're in Karnataka, I respect you, I value where you come from, and I'm willing to step into your world. That single act changes how people treat you, whether it's in business, whether it's in friendship, whether it's in community. Think of it this way. You can stand in a room as a guest, or you can stand in a room as one of their own. Because language is that passport which has full access and has all the visas in the world, where you can just about go into any country. It drops all barriers. When you speak their tongue, you collapse that distance. You move from an outsider to an insider. I have personally seen conversations in my life. I used to deal with French companies. I continue to deal with French companies. Turn in my favor. Why? Because I choose to communicate in their language. I was never perfect, but it showed intent. That intent was enough to open their hearts and open their mind. This is a beautiful saying by Nelson Mandela. If you speak to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you speak to a man in a language that he understands, he goes to its head. If you speak to him in his language, it goes to his heart. That one line carries all the point. Fluency is not an issue. Belonging is. Make the effort to speak in the language of your friend within that community, of that business, of anyone who you think you want to communicate with. It tells people that you belong much before you even enter the room. And once people feel that you belong, the next step always is the same. They start feeling and asking themselves, I think I can trust him. I think I can believe him. And when the trust and the belief and the right intention is there, that is where we move to the next S, and that is what is called selling. You're not selling in the narrow sense of any product here. You're selling your aura. That's why speaking language leads to selling. Remember, your life, you are selling 24/7. Let's recap. Story is who you are. Storytelling is how you make others live your truth, the shared truth. Speaking shows that you belong in that place. And once people feel you belong, they open their eyes, they open their hearts, they open their minds. And when people start listening to you, selling starts. That's the beauty of it. Selling starts. Every relationship, every role, every step forward happens because something was sold. You may not call it that, but believe me, it is happening all the time. All the time. Think about it. You're selling yourself when you go for a job. You're selling yourself when you sit across from your spouse or your partner. You even sell yourself when you're dating. You're showing what you bring to the table. You sell to your children, you sell to your friends, even to yourself. You also sell to yourself when you're fighting laziness or when you're chasing discipline. The truth, ladies and gentlemen, is you are selling 24/7, 7 days a week, until each of our passing. It's just that most people don't realize that. But what does that really mean? Selling does not mean pushing. It does not mean tomfoolery. It does not mean tricking someone into something. Selling is the art, understand this, selling is the art of conveying intrinsic value, a personal value, with clarity and confidence. Selling, when you're selling yourself, it is your intrinsic value, your personal value. When you're selling a business, you're selling value. Someone who I know has always said this: selling is being shameless about what you stand for. It is not arrogant, but unapologetic. It is saying, this is what I offer, this is why it matters, and this is why you care, or why you should care. In the Mahabharata, when Krishna went to the Kaurava court as a messenger, he wasn't telling a story. Everyone knew in that court he was trying, they knew the terms of peace. What he was doing was persuading, trying to move hearts, to win trust, to sell the idea of peace over war. That is selling. The same words had been spoken before, but when Krishna said them, the entire court listened, because the hinge was not the message, it's how he said it. And here is the lesson, ladies and gentlemen. You are wired to sell. Accept it. You sell every day of your life. Accept it. The only time you freeze, when you start thinking, Jesus, I have to start selling. Remove that fear, because you are the raw material I spoke about. You're always selling. Selling is not something that you turn on the tap. It is something that you already live every single day. You're selling to your boss, you're selling to your spouse, you're selling to your kids, you're selling to yourself. The only question you have to ask yourself before selling is, are you selling with clarity? Are you selling by accident? Because to sell with courage, you must learn to handle rejection. And this is where the next S comes in, the next principle, and that is called SPOTS. I say how to become a winning loser. Because I don't have to tell you, sounds over patronizing, but life is a game you don't always win. But guess what? SPOT trains you for that. It teaches you to compete with heart, to lose with dignity, and to return with discipline. It teaches you to compete with heart, to lose with dignity, and to return with discipline. And on the field, you prepare, you compete, you give your best. Isn't that life? Every single day. And sometimes you lose, and sometimes you win. And sports teaches you to face that truth. It teaches you that losing is not the end. It is part of that cycle. It builds discipline. Motivation is completely overrated. It tells you you need to show up on time. It tells you you need to repeat. It tells you you need to start listening to your coaches. It tells you you also need a referee in your life. These habits spill into life. They make you reliable. They make you structured. They make you resilient. But more importantly, it allows you what competition is all about as well. And competition, ladies and gentlemen, is never about trying to destroy others, but it is always in a competitive environment. When you're there, you're only raising your own level. If you ask elite athletes, elite leaders, who are you competing with? And they will say, I am competing with myself. I am competing with a former version or an earlier version of myself. Competition shows the gap where you are and where you can be. That gap is not shame. That gap is your fuel for life. And that's where I say sports teaches you what I call is a winning loser. But remember this, if I have to just leave one thing for you, loser still wins all the time. By learning, by coming back stronger, you start respecting yourself much more. In life, in your professional life, personal life, you will lose deals. You will lose opportunities. Sometimes you lose people who you love. If you learn to lose well, you will eventually win bigger. Time heals. Arjuna and Krishna in the Gita has said, victory and defeat, gains and losses, treat them alike. Harivansh Rai Bachchan said, जो हुआ तो भला, अगर नहीं हुआ तो और भी भला. That is the spirit of sports. Pick one up today. It could mean anything. And that is the spirit of life. And if sport trains you to lose well, the next skill is to remember well. Because please remember, memory or smriti, the next S, is respect in action, and that takes us to smriti. Smriti, memory, is your muscle memory. Your brain is like a muscle. Remember, when you're hungry, your stomach asks for food. But when your brain is hungry, it also needs its own protein. And that protein, ladies and gentlemen, is how you feed it, how you train it, and how often you use it to build that muscle. So reading and writing, if anyone has ever told you is about hobbies, they're actually exercises for your memory. Just as much you play sports, right? And that's for your muscles, for your brain memory, you need to read and write. And memory in turn is like that 256 gigabyte memory, where every skill eventually rests. Because when you're reading, remember what I'm saying, when you're reading, you're not looking at words. You're forcing your front cortex to focus, to hold information in the working memory and to dig information from your long-term memory. Academics and scientists call this process encoding. Each time you make this link, your whole memory to your muscle memory, you're strengthening your neural pathways. Neural pathways are the same engine, ladies and gentlemen, which artificial intelligence uses. It is like going to the gym and there's a lot of repetition. I love this quote, and this is said by a very, very dear friend of mine, and I'm going to recount this for you. And it says, if you're lost, read a book. If you want to get lost, read a book. And when you come back, write a book. Reading sharpens that mind, but writing seals that memory. And that memory is the hidden engine that powers everything else. Personally, when I feel lost, I go back to books. It resets my mind, it sharpens my recall, but more importantly, it fuels me back into life with clarity. So reading, again, it builds the muscle. And memory is the power. And memory is what relationship thrives on, ladies and gentlemen. Because connections live on what you remember. That takes us to Sandhi. Networks that are built on trust. Why? Because you and I, no one can succeed alone. Every door you walk through it, every door that is opened by a person is someone has trusted you enough to let you in. Networking is not about small talk. Networking is that fuel. Networking is your survival. It is how opportunities find you. Understand, it is what opportunities find you when you're not in the room. Speaking shows you belong. Selling moves people when you're in the room. But Sandhi, networking, is what works for you when you're not in the room. In the Mahabharata, again, the Pandavas, understand, the Pandavas did not win Kurukshetra by strength alone. They built alliances with Drupadas, with Virtas, with Panchalas, but above all, the alliance with Krishna. These alliances tilted the balance of power before the first arrow was shot. Look at the world around you. See the alliances that are happening. You will get a cue from that, what I'm talking about. The war in this case was decided much before the battle began because of the relationships and because of the alliances. But this is one more truth. Again, I'm borrowing from a very, very dear friend of mine who says it all the time. Wars win territories, but alliances, they build empires. Networking is not about collecting cards. It is about building that relationships. And relationship is that foundation where real businesses and real life happen. It is that intersection. Because business itself, ladies and gentlemen, is a transaction. One person pays, the other person receives. But it is the trust, the underpinning trust, that transactions last. Without trust, it is a one-off. With trust, it becomes a partnership. Multiple trust, you form an alliance. Multiple alliances, it becomes an empire. You are that aura, and hence some auras are built, feel like empires. Because when you have strong networks, three things happen. You get access to ideas, you get access to introductions, you get chances you would never see, you get support, people defend you, people never allow you to fall or fail. Look at alumni networks, they never allow you to fall or fail. You get reach. Every D2C, B2B business in life, they only talk about one thing. I wish I had a better reach. I wish I knew how I can reach more. But what happens if you don't build your network? Then you become invisible. You rather be wrong than be invisible. Because you want to be in that room much before your aura enters that room. And that will only be through networking. The secret of Sandhi or networks is simple. You have to give before you ask. You have to help. You have to connect people. You have to share your own resources. You water the plants before you let others water it for you. This is how people will learn your trust. Networking is that art of being shameless enough to show up, generous enough to give, and consistent enough to build trust. The Bhagavad Gita reminds us, you have the right to your actions, but not the fruit of those actions. That, ladies and gentlemen, essentially is life management. The Saptaniti is nothing more than this. How you act with clarity, you write your own story, you tell that story with consistency, you speak as if you belong, you sell with courage, you compete and lose with dignity, you build memory through reflection and through reading, and then, ladies and gentlemen, you create a network of trust in life that carries you forward. In my opinion, that's the way to live life. In my opinion, that is the way to win. Thank you so much.